you get into the discussion of church and canon law and what the scriptures say and what the different religions' interpretation of the different scriptures, that you could go on for the rest of your life and do a show every day for the rest of your life, and you'll have nothing but discussion after discussion about things which nobody seems to know anything about, and everybody has a different idea. I'm not interested in doing that. I'm interested in going back to the very bedrock where things actually came from. And when you do that, you're going to find, as I have and others have too, and you can find on my research society website on my home page all kinds of pictures and documents talking about things which you've heard of in religion, but you never actually knew what they meant. And so that's what I try and do. I try and demystify and boil down to the common denominator of what these religious churches and belief systems, where they actually came from and what they're actually in fact talking about. And so many times all of these illustrious ideas and belief systems in religion, when you do the research, very few people will be able to do that kind of research because it takes days and weeks and years. And most people don't have time. They're raising a family and doing what normal people do. They don't live abnormal lives like I do. And so that's why I feel I want to bring to the attention of people who don't have time to do this research. Well, here's where to start if you're really interested. If you're not interested, I don't care. But if you are really interested in where things come from and where ideas develop and what they really mean, not what you thought they meant, then that's why I want to be here to help people to find the quickest way to get to that kind of information. And my website, my Jordan Maxwell Show website, like you said, my research society has all kinds of documents where to go for this information. What do these words mean? Where do you find this? Where do you find that? Here's how to do this and that. And so that's what I try and do. Just help people who want to know and who are trying to find out, and just save them a lot of time of going to libraries and studying and reading, and I've already done that for 60 years. I'd like to just help people see where to go to find the truth, and it's all there if you just know what to look for. And most people have never been told what to look for, what words are important. So that's what I do. So when we get into religion, there's so many topics that I haven't even begun to cover. But I think we talked about the social gospel of the Jesuits and the connection with the Jesuits, social gospel in the Catholic Church connecting directly to the Communist Party, the Soviet Union. There's a connection between the Jesuits, the Vatican, and the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, communism, that has never been brought out into the public, never been told to the public. And then when you see so many ideas being expressed in movies and television shows where these religious ideas have actually come from. So that's what I try and do. The Vatican has had the Jesuits doing all kinds of incredibly dark things around the world, which we today would call terrorism, blowing up buildings and killing people at the airports and all that kind of stuff. The Jesuits are very interested in that kind of stuff, and they cause that chaos to frighten the people, and so that the people will turn to the church, and they are actually perfecting their political maneuverings by assassinations, by bombings, and all kinds. And from there, you get to, if you're studying the Jesuits and their terrorism around the world, going back hundreds of years, all the way back to 1500s, you also come into contact with, in the last couple of hundred years, something in the Vatican called propaganda due, or P2. You go on the web and just type in P and a 2, P2 Lodge, and you will see that P2 is in Italian is propaganda due, and propaganda due was a secret society of bankers and assassins and all kinds of mafiosis, gangsters, underworld organizations all around the world to create chaos, to create terrorism, to cause the death of leaders of countries. Propaganda due. And it's actually in the Godfather series, the movie Godfather series, the third in the series, the last one, Godfather 3, the whole movie of Godfather 3 is about P2, propaganda due, and what they're doing, and how the Vatican is doing business with all of the most powerful underworld organized crime figures around the world in different countries, orchestrating the distribution of drugs, heroin, all the different illegal drug trafficking, plus white slavery, child slavery. It's an incredible, dark, scary world that the Medellin cartels in South America and Central America, all those cartels that are flooding the world, especially America, with drugs and murder. You're reading about it every day. All of this is orchestrated in the Vatican, period. End of sentence, period. All of this is understood, being operated through the Vatican and our organizations like P2, the Jesuits and other nefarious organizations and organized criminal syndicates are operating now in the Middle East. They're operating in Russia with the Russian mafia, with the Italian Sicilian connection. All of this stuff in organized crime ultimately goes back to Rome, all the way back to the days of Caesars of Rome. And as I've said before, the Roman Empire has dominated Europe for about 2,300 years. At the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, the official fall of the Roman Empire, for the last 1,600 years, the Vatican has dominated. Well, we're talking about Rome. We're talking about the Rome as a world power. Rome is a world power. Why? Because of the Vatican sits in the middle of Rome, and it is the brains behind what we used to call the ancient Roman Empire. And it's still here today. They've set up an organization. They took over our government a long time ago. The Vatican slyly came in quietly, bought up politicians, murdered some, frightened others, assassinated some, and ultimately today the Vatican dominates the United States corporation. It's an incredible story.
It certainly is, Jordan. And you know what's amazing is that in earlier shows you covered exactly how we can see the resonant organization in the United States is based on the Roman concept of organization. And you told that extensively during other shows, but here's something I think a lot of people don't know. The structure within the legitimate, or the really well organized, I should say, not legitimate, that's a bad word, but the really well organized Sicilian criminal organizations is based on the military structure of Rome. In fact, the entire concept, the way it's done with tribute being paid upward in the chain, the idea that there are captains and individuals which are given particular ranks within organized crime. This is actually another fingerprint of ancient Rome. It's based more on the constructs of the Roman legions, but still the same structure is inspired by the same people. Is that not true?
Yes. As a matter of fact, in the second movie of Godfather 2, there was a scene in there when the attorney, the Godfather's attorney, was talking with one of the other mob guys who's been convicted, and he was going to die in prison. And so the attorney went to visit him. And you see the attorney walking with this mob guy who's going to die. They're talking about their lives together. And the attorney, I think it was the attorney, said, in the movie Godfather 2, he said, remember, our thing that we do was based on the old ancient Roman Empire. This is the way we run our business today, the same way Rome ran its business to control the world. It's never changed. It's still the same thing. And today, organized crime around the world in different countries is always being backed up and put together, organized, directed, and financed out of Europe, out of Rome. And so if you're tired of organized crime all over the world, just look at the Vatican, because that is where it's all being formulated. Put together and formulated to organize it so that it works so well. And this is why organized crime works so incredibly well, because it has a world-class institution that's been around for 2,300 years of knowing how to control nations and peoples and laws and regulations, and how to control the masses of millions of people in the ancient Roman Empire. Well, today we're still doing the same thing. I think there's a lot more to it, but I think Rome perfected the establishment of the institutions of mankind that are necessary to control the man and woman and child on the earth. They were brilliant when they put together the institutions that would promote their philosophy and their control of the world, and do it in such a way that no one seemed to realize what was really going on. Today we have educational institutions, universities and colleges, never ever realizing the very word college comes from the collegia in Italy, in Rome. And it's called the Collegia, or the College of Cardinals. So when you go to college, that's a Latin Roman Catholic term. College. I don't care what college. It's Roman. And it's run like Rome. And so when you look at the words and terms, when you go to college, you start off and you're a sophomore. Well, in the ancient world, the word sophomore meant you were an idiot. You were totally mentally deranged, goofy idiot that didn't know how to find your way out of a paper bag. So that anything that's really screwy and stupid today we call sophomoric, meaning this is stuff what sophomores talk about. Sophomore means you're stupid. And then later on you have something called a freshman. Oh, you're a freshman in school. Yeah, you're a fresh man. And you're a sophomore. You're ignorant and stupid. And so we're going to teach you what to kiss and when. And we're going to teach you how to operate in this world. And we will give you a diploma. If you answer all the questions correctly, then you get a diploma, which is a work permit. And now you can go out and earn a living with a work permit. But it comes from the word collegia, college, university. And so all the most important universities around the world are either owned by or run by Jesuits or some division of the Roman system of ancient Rome. So this is why I say that I don't think the world is able to extricate itself out of the mess we're in, because so many people just do not realize the size and the implications of how big this apparatus really is. It goes back thousands of years, and you think all the things that were going on 5,000 years ago was just a bunch of primitive goofballs doing whatever they call themselves doing. No, they were perfecting the whole idea of perfecting how to control the human race. And when it came to the founding of the Roman Empire, they had some incredibly fascinating ideas about how to impact the human. As a matter of fact, it was Albert Pike, the head of the Masonic order, the highest ranking Freemason, wrote a book. But I just recall that in the first couple of pages, he talked about if you're going to control the whole world, it's impossible to do because there's too many different kinds of people, too many different ideas, and you're never going to be able to force the whole human race to do anything because you just don't have an army big enough. But he said, but look at the world as one thing, one man, one woman, and one child. That's the way you got to look at the entire earth of mankind. One man, one woman, and one child. So what is it that you need to do to capture the minds and the hearts of one man? And so it explains how you work on the human mind. And therefore, if you could get one man buying into something, use the same method to get the whole male population of the world to buy into it. Because all men are men. So learn how to control one man and you've got the whole world. Learn how to control one woman, her thinking, her body, the way she feels about things, the way she views things. Learn how to control her, one woman, and now you've got all the women in the world. And so this goes all the way back to the professional politicians and the founding of America, wanting to get away from all of that. And most people are not aware that when the United States of America as a republic was originally founded, two institutions were not allowed in this country. Go back and read the encyclopedias about the founding of America, and you will find there were two separate institutions that the founding fathers of America said would not and could not exist in this country under any circumstances. One was the Vatican. And the Catholic Church, period, was not allowed to have any sway in this country whatsoever. And the other was the banking institutions of Europe and of the Roman Empire. And so today, that's all we have are banks in the church everywhere. And all the different churches, even including the York Rite cults like Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and Seventh-day Adventists, Christadelphians, Worldwide Church of God, all of the different York Rite cults today in America and in Europe are all based on the ancient Roman canon laws, ancient Roman maritime admiralty laws, all of the secret contracts and things which have been signed to start different religions, even the whole British Israel World Federation that I talked about a long time ago. British Israel World Federation. Go do some homework on that. And you will find that there's a world of treason and all kinds of incredible lies and deception that's been perpetrated by Rome on the world. And that's what we even have today as old saying that says, all roads lead to Rome. I don't care what kind of criminality you're talking about, from child sacrifice to white slavery to buying and selling children and women. around the world, to our narcotics trafficking, and people who put together wars. You got to have a fight promoter, so you got to have people who put together the wars for us and sell us on the idea and then send us into battle. Well, those people are trained. You will find they're always trained at the best universities in America, which are Jesuit run, Jesuit owned. And so it's a very, very big and dark and old and ancient story that if we're, that's why I say all the time that I don't think it's possible to change the destiny of the human race now. My feeling is, and it's actually my feeling, and it's just my feeling, it's my understanding. I don't think anything is going to change for us on the earth unless and until there is some kind of an intervention in our affairs by a higher power. I would prefer to think that that would be God who would intervene in our, intervene in our normal destiny as a human family. Well, we read in the Bible sometimes in the past we're told that God intervened in our business here on the earth and created a worldwide flood and killed everybody. I would not be a bit surprised if the gods themselves, the great spirits who have overseen our creation and who are watching our destiny unfold, that they are going to do something to clean up the direction and the destiny of the whole entire human family. Because we have become so far out of line, we're so totally corrupt in all of our thinking that all the nations of the world are corrupt. We are now seeing slavery, prostitution, drug running, wars and violence and gang violence everywhere on the earth, including the deepest parts of Africa. Still looks just like us. What they're doing is what we're doing. So I'm afraid that for the human family, we are going to have to experience something very, very bad before the Spirit that created us can recreate us and start us back on a different road. Because if not, if we're left alone now, I don't know how we're going to make it to the next century. I don't know how we're going to make it to the next 10 years. And besides, we will not learn. We will not learn by listening to an older and like they used to do thousands of years ago, the older men of the community, with the long beards, and they were the older men, and they were told, and the people were told to listen to their old fathers and all the older tribal members. They were young at one time, and they now know things that we young people don't know, and so we need to listen to their wisdom. Well, nobody's listening to anybody anymore. So if we're all in a big room, like a motion picture theater, and the lights go off and everything's off and it's dark, if somebody comes into the room, into that theater with a big light, a big flashlight, or a big lantern that's lighting up everything, we call him Lucifer. Because the name Lucifer means one who brings the light. He's not the light, but he brings the light. And so the planet Venus was referred to in Hebrew as Helio, or the light bringer. The one who brings the light. Why? It's because in the morning, in the ancient world, and especially in Egypt, the priest of Ra, Amun-Ra, the sun god, the priest would wake in the morning very early, and they would go out in front of the temple, and they would all sit and wait and watch for Lucifer, the light bringer, to come, which was the planet Venus. Why? Because Venus is very impressive. In the morning, when it's first coming up, it's very bright, and it's really interesting. Something that bright coming up on the horizon. But it told everybody, and today it tells everyone, It's bringing the light. What are you talking about bringing the light? The sun. The sun is the light of the world. That's why we say Jesus is light of the world. Of course the sun is the light of the world. But Venus is not lighting the world, but Venus is telling you he's coming behind me. So when you see Venus, know the sun is coming now. Now the light of the world is going to rise, and he's going to be our risen Savior. So the ancient peoples in India and Egypt, etc., in the ancient world, all realized when that bright, beautiful, bright star, that bright planet called Venus, when you see that thing coming up on the horizon, it's not the light of the world. It's not going to light the whole earth. But it is telling you, get ready, the light is coming. He's bringing the light to the world. Why? Because he just precedes the coming of the sun. And so we call Jesus, God's Son, the light of the world. Yeah, well, who owns the sun? Well, nobody owns the sun. Well, somebody must own it. Well, if anybody owned it, theoretically, I guess you could say God owns it. Okay, so it's God's Son. And God's Son is our risen Savior. That's right, because it rises every morning. If it don't, we're dead in 3 weeks. And so the Venus was the light bringer, the one who announced the coming of God's Son, the light of the world. So today we say that Venus is the light bringer. He brings the light. And so Jesus said, I am the light of the world. I'm the one that lights the world. So Jesus is the light bringer, because through Jesus we are enlightened about God, about the universe, about our lives. We're supposedly to worship God's Son, the light of the world. And if you're looking to God's Son to learn from him, then you are his pupil, which is a term we use for the round circle of your eye as a pupil. So you're learning from God's Son. You're taking in intellectual and spiritual enlightenment from the Son. And so Jesus is the Son, and he is the one who brings the light. So it was a misunderstanding of astrological terms because the writers of the King James Bible, translators, were very, very good with the King's English, but they weren't that hot on Aramaic and Greek. And so sometimes they made mistakes and said things that weren't exactly correct. And so they misunderstood the word Helio and translated it Lucifer, when it should be just a bright star. Anything bright star that heralds the coming of the sun, the light of the world, is called Lucifer, one who is not the light, but he's bringing the light to you. Jerome Massey is an extraordinary Egyptologist, but he once said in one of his books, the quote was very good. He said, they, T-H-E-Y, they, whoever it is, they're going to find it very difficult. Those who have accepted the authority as truth, rather than the truth as the authority. So people have accepted authority because what do you mean authorities? Well, they're the people who write down what you are supposed to do and the way you're supposed to live. They are the authors of the law. They decide what the law should be, so they write it down, and they're called scribes, and they're scribbling the scripture, they're scribbling scribes, and so they're writing down how you should think, how you should dress, how you should operate in this world, and then you follow them, whatever they tell you to do, you follow them, and then they are the authorities. They are the ones who authored the document you call the law. Now, when I'm talking about early Christianity, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say that early Christianity has no bearing whatsoever on today's Christian religion. Christianity today looks nothing like it did 1,000 years ago. Nothing. In the motion picture world, Steven Spielberg made a movie called The Raiders of the Lost Ark. And being Jewish, he did a movie, and it was a very famous movie, very extremely well done, about Indiana Jones was sent to find the lost Ark of the Covenant. Well, we talked about that before. And so where does Indiana Jones go first to find the lost Ark of the Covenant, or the lost Ark of the Hebrews? He goes to Tibet. Not to the Holy Land. No, Tibet is where he goes first. And then after he goes to Tibet, he finds what he needs, the information he needs now to find the lost Ark of the Hebrews. So after Tibet, where does he then go? Well, he goes not to the Middle East, not to Israel, not to the Holy Land, but from Tibet he goes directly to find the Ark in Egypt, not the Holy Land. There's nothing holy in the Holy Land. It's all a story. And so he goes to Egypt, and be damned if he doesn't find the lost Ark in Egypt. Why? It's because Steven Spielberg is a lot of things, but stupid is not one of them. He knows exactly what he's doing when he puts that into a movie, that the Indiana Jones archaeologist finds the Holy Ark of the Covenant in Egypt, because it's an Egyptian symbol that has nothing to do with the ancient Hebrews, period. Because there was no such a thing as ancient Hebrews. There was no ancient Israel. And so the next thing, this is dealing with stories in the Bible which are not in the Bible and which are not being explained to the people. The lost ark is an Egyptian ark, not a Hebrew ark. There never was a Hebrew ark. It was just a story. But in the next movie Spielberg made was the after Raiders of the Lost Ark. The next one was the hunt for the what was it called? The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And what was the Last Crusade? Well, the Last Crusade was for the cup of Christ, for the Holy Grail, for the Holy Cup that Jesus was supposed to have drank from in the Last Supper. Well, the Last Supper is a metaphor. There was no Last Supper. It has nothing to do with people eating and drinking together in a supper. It has to do with the Jewish symbol of the Passover meal. That's a whole story we could get into if we haven't, but not now. So in the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, he's looking for the cup of Christ, the cup of the Grail. And so we read in the Bible. Today you can read in the Bible a point where Jesus says in the New Testament, he said, upon this rock I will build my church. Now this is important because it's in the New Testament and it's supposedly Jesus saying this. And Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And so the Catholic Church, the Roman Church said, oh, upon this rock, well, a rock in the ancient Greek was Petra, P-E-T-R-A. Petra is a rock in the ancient Greek language. In the ancient world, Petra was a rock. And so the Catholic translators, they said, oh, well, it was misspelled. See, it's spelled here in the old ancient document, P-E-T-R-A, Petra. But actually, it was misspelled. It was P-E-T-E-R, Peter. And so Peter was the rock upon which Jesus is going to build his church. And so they would tell you, well, the word Peter actually, I guess, comes from Petra. In one way or another, it comes from Petra, because Peter was like a rock. You know, he was just a big, strong guy, and he was just like a rock. And whatever he did, it was just like a big, thunderous rock. And so that's what we call Peter Petra. No, no, and no. When Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church, go back and look at the word rock in the encyclopedias and dictionaries of the Bible, and you will see the word rock is a word Petra, P-E-T-R-A. Petra is a stone rock, a huge mountainous rock, and I do mean huge mountainous rock, in the country of Jordan. if it wasn't at war and so much bloodshed going on in the Middle East right now, if you had the time and the money, you could go to the country of Jordan and take a tour, and they will take you out to this enormous rock that you have to go through these canyons to get to. And when you come to it, it's a huge cathedral, a beautiful cathedral temple to an ancient gods in the country of Jordan. And that big temple out in the middle of nowhere, carved out of a huge mountain, is called Petra. Why? Because Petra is a stone. And the temple is one solid piece of stone that's chipped away and made into a beautiful temple. It's extraordinary. Well, in the movie Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, if you remember, if you saw the movie, they're looking for the lost, the cup of the Grail, and it takes them to Petra in the country of Jordan. And they go through the canyons, getting to this enormous temple that anybody can go to today if you're a tourist. And it's called Petra because it's a one big rock. Well, an important point here is that Jesus said, upon this rock I will build my church. And the rock is translated Petra, not Peter. P-E-T-E-R, Peter. No, Petra. P-A-T-R-A, Petra. P-E-T-R-A. And so what I'm saying is that now we see that the real story of Christianity, Jesus said, is based on Petra, that stone mountain that's carved into an incredibly beautiful temple in the country of Jordan. Jesus says in the Bible, that's the basis for my church, period. My church I am basing on Petra. So you better go back and look at the country of Jordan, and then look at Petra, the great temple that was carved out of the mountain of stone. Upon this rock I will build my church. Well, that's exactly what it is. And so when Indiana Jones and his father, Sean Connery, they go inside the great temple of Petra, and what do they find but one of the Knights Templars? One of the Knights Templars and the Knights of St. John, and he's kneeling before an altar with all of these different candles and holy things all on the altar, and he is protecting, he's standing guard over the very foundations of Christ and the Christian religion, is in Petra, the carved temple out of a rock. And so if you really are interested in Christianity, you might want to forget all of this nonsensical stuff you've heard out of Hollywood and out of the churches, and go back and read the scripture, and it says, upon this rock I will build my church. Signed, Jesus. Now go back and look at Petra in the country of Jordan, and you will find that there's a whole new story based on what we today believe is called Christianity. No, Christianity is a dark and profound understanding of that great temple in the country of Jordan called Petra, and who built it, and why did they build it the way they did. And that's the foundation of real Christianity, is in Petra, in the country of Jordan. It has got nothing to do with Rome, nothing to do with Babylon or any of the rest of the ancient places in the world, but right. Petra. Well, I even here across the pond, even in America, our courts are run by the Bible. The Bible is the foundation for what we call our judicial system of law. And so, that's why we have in Washington, D.C., that huge, enormous statue of Moses, standing in front of and near the entrance to the legal department for the United States government, the Department of Justice.
Department of Justice, yeah.
Yeah, and we have Moses standing there with his magic wand, and the serpent on his magic wand, and it's an extraordinary subject of where do our laws come from. It goes all the way back to England. It goes all the way back to the Old Testament, the book of Moses.
See, but is it fair to say that American courts are entirely run by the Bible, in quotes? Because, after all, I don't see the black robe anywhere in the Bible. I don't see, the black robes, first of all. Secondly, Lady Justice, that's an ancient goddess that's not mentioned in the Bible, I think. However, it's mentioned in other religious constructs. The blindfolded woman with the scales, there's a lot of symbolism there, that, I don't know, doesn't seem very biblical to me. Anyway.
Well, the lady with the lady with the weights, blindfolded is Libra, constellation of Libra. And what was I going to tell you about the basic idea? I'm talking about the conceptual idea is that our laws come from the Bible. That's what, so therefore that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I'm just saying
this court.
It's interesting, though, because even the use of the word justice, right? Yeah. It doesn't sound like it's just according to, when we went over the 10 Commandments and what that actually is. And, we've been through that in previous shows, but I just find it interesting that there's all these different symbols going on. And the concept that, a corporation is being represented and how your name is in all caps and all that kind of good stuff all converges in the legal society.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
which is really bizarre to me because, there are some people that think, well, it's biblical law, but it's not. It's really not.
It's not because there was no Moses to start with. Moses is a fictitious character that was written into the scriptures probably during the Middle Ages, in AD, in the Middle Ages. There was no ancient Israel, so we know there was no ancient Moses, and all the stories coming out of the Old Testament are not really BC religion. I believe that I'm sure that there was, in fact, no BC religion called Judaism, period. There was no Jewish nation. There was no ancient Israel. There was no Moses. There was no Abraham. All of these people in the Bible can be traced back if you go and sit in the library for days upon end and photocopy the documents. You will see that all of these stories in the Old Testament were just that, stories. Ezekiel and Daniel, all these statues in the churches of Europe, show them all there doing their miracles with a magic wand. They're raising the dead with a magic wand, etc. Well, the magic wand was used by the Druids, the Druid culture of Europe. And I told you that before. North, East, West, and Southern Europe were Druidic. And Druids were, the part of Europe that we Americans come from. Originally was from Europe. And so you take the North, East, West, and South, which you spell N-E-W-S, which is news. You get the news. Anything that happens in the North, East, West, and South is N-E-W-S, news. And so you find out that if you do some research, go to the web if you want, and type, and go to, image, where you'll only see pictures, just image. And then type in Druid high priest, Druid religion and Druid priest. And then look at the way the ancient Druids in Europe dressed. They were holy men. They were the holiest of holy men in European culture. They were the lawyers, the doctors, the judges, the religious leaders, all the important people who led the Europeans for thousands of years had to belong to a society called the Druids. And one of the most important symbols in the Druid religion was a magic wand. Why? Because like Mickey Mouse with his magic wand, and Merlin the magician from England with his magic wand. And today we have orchestra conductors and musical conductors who lead the music with a magic wand. Well, magic wands were always made out of the wood of a holly tree. It's made out of Hollywood. And today we have magic of Hollywood. Why? It's Druids who are running Hollywood. But the Druids, if you look in the encyclopedia or go on the web to image and type in Druid priest, and you'll see how the Druid priests were dressed. And take out all those pictures and save all the pictures of all the high priests of the Druids and how they dressed and what they believed, etc. Then go to the web to image and type in Jewish high priest. It's identical. The pictures are identical. Everything that the Druids taught is what the Jews taught. Everything that the Druids wore, their high priests and their religious services and their religious, instruments, all of the holiness of the Druid people is Jewish. So therefore, now you say, wait a minute. There's a connection between the Druids and Judaism? Yeah. Well, the most important, impressive peoples in the Druid community were the Germans. And the Germans, going all the way back thousands of years, the Germanic race of peoples, the Germans, and then you start to see for the first time a connection between the ancient peoples called the Germans and the Druids. And then you see the connection between the Druids and the Jews. Now you become to see the connection between the high priests of the Germanic people and the Druids, who were the high priests of the Germanic people, and today the religious garb and religious implications of the clothes of the Jewish high priest. So the bottom line is that there's a very ancient, old, and hidden connection between the Druids and the Jews, the Jewish people. And there's an extremely ancient and dark hidden connection between the Jewish people and the Germans. The Germans are the ancient Jews, and the ancient Jews are the Germans. And they both come out of the old Germanic Druid empire. So that Judaism today is a totally different religion than you think it is. As its history has nothing to do with the Middle East. There was no Middle Eastern Israel and the holy people of God, and all of that is a story. Just like the Bible is called the greatest story ever told. No, go back and look at the connection between the Druid peoples of Europe and the German people of Europe, who today we call them, the Germans today is referred to as the Holy Empire. The Holy Roman Empire was centered in Germany. But the Holy Roman Empire centered in Germany was based on what we call Judaism. So that the Jews, the Germans, and now you get into the dark religion of the Jews in relation to the Germans. Because they don't want you to know that Judaism is actually a Gentile Druidism. The powers that be do not want you to know, which I've talked to rabbis and rabbinical authorities, and they agree. They say, yeah, you're right, so what? And I said, well, then why don't you tell your people in your synagogue? And then I found out why the synagogue is spelled S-I-N in Israel and S-Y-N in America. Well, there's another reason why. It goes back to the Druids again. Yeah, well, Kabbalah goes, that's an old ancient teachings coming out of the Babylonian Empire, coming out of Iraq and Iran. Iraq was referred to in the ancient world. What we call today Iraq was called Babylonia. And the Iraqi religion, that's why the United States went into Iraq. There was a reason why we went into Iraq, because that's Babylon. This is the home of the Babylonian book of the Jews. And the Jewish religion is based on a lot of the old Babylonian teachings coming out of Iraq. That's why there was an Iraqi war. That's a big, big story here that's never been told. You will go on the web and type in Kabbalah hand sign. Kabbalah hand sign. And you will see all of the most important people, from the David Rockefellers to the Rothschilds to all the international bankers to movie stars and musical stars and Hollywood personalities and industrial giants in Germany and around the world, and the British prime ministers and all of the most important people in the world are giving a Kabbalistic hand sign. And watch it on television. When you see these infomercials and big commercials on something, whatever the commercials are selling, watch the hand signs of the people presenting the commercials or the infomercials. And watch the hand signs on the news at night when you see the president and the prime ministers of England, etc., and they're all sitting around talking. Watch their hand signs to each other.
Well, let me introduce something here too, Jordan, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but even among street gangs, you have what they used to call the Crips. I believe they still exist. Guess what? They use a form of communication that some people refer to as hand mandalas. And guess what? The gang signs, whatever it is you call it, these different formations with their hands, it's the same language.
That's exactly right. Precisely the same language.
Another interesting thing is you want another pop culture reference really quickly. Star Trek. How about that? Because Spock uses that split finger thing, live long and prosper.
That's right.
It's actually a rabbinical blessing.
That's right.
According to the Kabbalah, which is, it's not a negative thing, what Spock is doing. But I'm just saying, go ahead.
When Mr. Spock gives that strange hand sign, which we're all used to, when you divide the hand, but divide the four fingers, and down the middle as a hand sign Mr. Spock on Star Trek gives, that's a rabbinical blessing. Now, in Christianity, the Pope makes the sign of the cross on himself, from his head to his stomach to both shoulders. He makes the sign of the cross, which is a blessing to the people, supposedly. Well, when the Jewish rabbis give a blessing to their people, they reach their hands in the air with Mr. Spock's with that divided hand sign that Mr. Spock gives in the television show. But what that is, the reason why Mr. Spock gives that hand sign, it's because it represents the sun, which is the symbol, which is the ultimate god of Judaism, is the sun. Judaism is a sun-based religion. It's based on the worship of the sun. And so the sun in the age of Aries, the ram, is of course a goat or a ram, but the age of the sun in the age of the ram was what Mr. Spock is giving that symbol, because that divided hand sign, divided fingers, is a goat's hoof, the hoof of a goat. And so I've got that on my website. You can see it in the documents from the Jewish Encyclopedia showing you that Mr. Spock's hand sign is a symbol of a goat god, the symbol of the god of Aries, the goat, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world, the Lamb of God, the goat god, Baphomet, and he is the god of the Hebrews. Well, it's all based on the ancient sun worship. And that's a whole story in itself. Well, first of all, if you remember, on 9/11, when that happened, when the World Trade Center was attacked, it said, which I picked up on immediately. I knew there was something wrong here, completely wrong, because it showed President Bush sitting there reading a book with the children in the school classroom, and it said, they kept prominently saying it was a book about the goat, and the president
literally called My Pet Goat. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my pet goat. Well, look up My Pet Goat and Freemasonry, and you will see that the Masonic Order has a whole story about, quote, my pet goat, end quote. It's a Masonic term. It's a Masonic idea. And that's why when somebody makes you mad, we say, well, he got your goat. No, that's a Masonic term in Freemasonry. So, and so the president is reading about my pet goat. Well, the goat is Aries, the ram, the Lamb of God. And that's why Jesus is connected to Bacchus Dionysus. Bacchus, look up Bacchus. Bacchus Dionysus, and you will see something that looks exactly like the devil. This incredibly ugly man with a snarl on his face and horns and a goatee, looks just like the devil, but he's called Bacchus Dionysus in the ancient Greek world, and he was the god of grapes and wine. And then you look at the symbols for Jesus, and you will see Jesus is Bacchus Dionysus, and he has around him all the pictures around about Jesus have him sitting in the midst of wine and bread. And of course, in the Catholic Church, they offer in Sunday communion the wine, the priest drink the wine, and the bread they offer to the parishioners. So the bread and the wine in the Catholic service is actually the bread and wine of Bacchus Dionysus, who we use as a symbol for the devil. Yes, because Jesus himself, supposedly, in the story of the Bible, he is sacrificed. By the Almighty God allows him to be sacrificed and die. And so, therefore, the God of the Bible is the same ancient God that has required all the ancient cultures of the world to sacrifice a goat, sacrifice a lamb, sacrifice your baby, sacrifice humans. And this is why Abraham is told, take your son out. God says to Abraham, take your son out and cut his head off. Sacrifice him to me. I want to see it. And so Abraham takes his young son out, puts him on a rock, and gets out the knife and is going to stab him and kill him. And then the angel pops in and says, no, we just wanted to see if you were stupid enough to do that. So God said, you don't have to sacrifice him. He now knows that you will do whatever he tells you to do. So you don't have to sacrifice. Well, myself, I say, wait a minute. If God tells Abraham to go out and sacrifice your son, your boy, then that tells me that according to the ancient Hebrew philosophies of theology and religion, that it was all right for a human sacrifice. And then you begin to see how, according to the ancient Jews, there were human sacrifices. As a matter of fact, it was very famous with Marduk, when the Jewish nation would sacrifice their babies and their children to Marduk. And go back and look at Marduk on the web, go to image and type in Marduk, and you will see this enormous big statue with fire in his lap. It's a big statue and there's a fire, and the Jews would take their babies and throw them into the fire to offer their children to Marduk. And so it goes back to Marduk, the god of the sun god Marduk. Why? Because that's why he had a fire in his lap. He was a god of fire, the god of the sun. So sun worship has always been the center for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It all goes back to India. It's a strange, incredible story. And when you think about the Germans, they were sun worshipers also. And then with the rise of Adolf Hitler, they personified the sun, as a swastika. Because everybody knows a swastika was a sun symbol. And so, if they were connected to Judaism, which the German people were, and the Germans were already sun worshippers, well, so were the Jews. They were worshiping the sun. But they said, to cover it up, the Jews said that the name of God is too holy for us to use, so we don't want to use his name, in everyday speech because his name is too holy. And so we will have a substitute name. And the substitute name is on all the altars of Jewish synagogues all over the world. Any synagogue you will see has a round circle of a yellow sun with the sunburst, and inside the sun on the altars of any synagogue you will see 4 letters, which is translated tetragrammaton. Tetra is 4, gramma is a letter, and Aton, the Aton, is a sun god in Egypt. So it's tetragrammaton. So the Jews were worshippers of the tetragrammaton, but his name is so important that we can't use his name, so we just call it tetragrammaton. No, tetragrammaton. Look up Aton. It's the old ancient sun god of the Jews. And in Germany, it's a swastika. And that's why today in Israel, there are synagogues in Israel today. Go on the web and type it in to look and see the pictures on the image. Look up Jewish swastika, and it will show you synagogues in Israel that have big red swastikas on the floor, just like the Nazis. Why? Because it's all connected behind the scenes that you didn't know anything about. The Jewish symbol for their god was the sun. The Jewish symbol for the sun was a tetragrammaton, or the swastika. The swastika can also be made out of Jewish letters. There's a connection between Jewish swastikas and Nazi swastikas. The German people, my God, there is a story here you are not going to believe once you sit down and start researching this subject and spend a couple of months just looking at the basic concept, and you will see there's a very ancient and old connection that's been well hidden because of between the Jewish religion, the Nazi party, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and all of the what we call terrorism going on throughout the world. Something very big is happening on the earth, and we haven't got the faintest idea in the world what is going on. You better wake up. The world is not what you thought it was. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are nothing more than basic ancient religions worshiping the pagan gods of ancient India. It's an incredible story of the betrayal of the human race.